So welcome everyone to our City Council meeting. For the record, it is Tuesday, July 12th. It's 2 minutes after 3. We'll start with roll call attendance. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh. Here. Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Councilmember Palmer. Here. Councilmember Borton.
Here.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Here.
Mayor DeVeard.
Here.
And Councilmember Milam is absent.
Item 2 is a pledge of allegiance. If you'll all rise. Item 3 is adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
on the 7G, the proposed resolution number is 16-1146. And with that, I move we approve the agenda as published.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 4 is our consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve the consent agenda as published and for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Here.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Motion passes with 4 ayes and 1 here. Item 5 is under community presentations. Tonight, this afternoon, we have Colleen Braga and Jody Gimpler with Boys and Girls Club. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, members of the council, for allowing us to come today and express our most sincere gratitude for your support in helping us get our new gym and teen center there on Meridian Road opened up was it May 19th, I think was our grand opening date, and I know a lot of you were there, but we just wanted today, we brought a little cool framed gift for you all to kind of celebrate the great facility that we now have serving kids in Meridian. I don't know if you guys have been there since the grand opening, but it is just teeming with kids. The other day I was in the teen center and every possible seat was filled. The gym, they had it, they put the bleachers down the center and had the teens on one side doing activities and the younger kids on the other side. We're getting about 350 kids there every day during the summer. And as you can imagine, without that space, those kids would be having a hard time. We've been able to, this year we're serving about 100 kids a day more than we were serving last year. So it's pretty amazing. And it all started with the city getting behind it and supporting us. It was the impetus for a lot of other people to get involved. And I wanted to thank Mayor Tammy especially because she helped us. We wouldn't be where we are without her support and helping us raise the funds. We just wanted to thank you all and present you with this. Hopefully you'll find a space here in City Hall to show it off. But it has depictions of our teen center, our new facility, the kids enjoying the grand opening, and of course the gymnasium. So we're looking forward to our continued partnership and many years of partnering between the Boys and Girls Club and the City of Meridian. So thank you,
Colleen. I would say that chairing the campaign was easy because we have a community that cares. Mm-hmm. And what you and your staff has done to establish your reputation as a safe place, as a place that has adults that care and delivers all the 5 promises that we need to commit to our kids to have available to them. And it's because of the reputation that you have set and formed that people invested because they believed in the program. That makes it easy.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate your comments. Is there a possibility of getting a quick picture that we can Facebook out? I don't want to take up too much of your time, but.
Yes, for the paper.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, you will? That's perfect. Oh, he's gonna email me. Yeah, Steve, you should come up.
join us.
Come
We should have phones.
And Keith.
Yeah, and Keith, do you want to come up?
Yeah. Keith.
All right, thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much.
Thank you.
Certainly. You bet.
Pretty nice, huh?
Reminds us of that.
Those two kids did a lot of work.
Well, thank you, and I think certainly who's missing from this opportunity to see the results of decisions made are Councilman Zaremba and Councilman Roundtree as well. So it definitely showed what kind of community we live in with the generosity of getting behind this project. So thank you, Council. I think that this council really did show great deal of leadership in making sure that this happened for our community. So our next item is also our investment in youth, and we have our Mayor's Youth Advisory Council here to talk about participatory budgeting, led by Councilman Borton, and they're here to tell you how the process went and have an ask. So Cheyenne?
So, hi, Madam Mayor and council members of the council. My name is Cheyenne Quilter, and this last year in MYAC, I was the Government Affairs Chairwoman, and this coming year, I'll be the chair of MYAC, and I'm really excited to share with you what MYAC's been working on their participatory budgeting project. So this happened all throughout this year. All right, so a little bit about what is a participatory budgeting project. What it was a different way to manage money and engage youth into government. And this money that we had for the participatory budget came from the public budget. And then it was led by City Councilman Borton, who got the idea in NLC last fall. And what he really wanted and what MYAC wanted was for this project to be led by youth only. So there could be a little bit of guidance from advisors, but it was youth only coming up with the ideas, the actual rules, everything that you see in this project was done by the youth. And then the youth were the ones who set up the guidelines, the meetings, and ideas for something we as the youth of Meridian wanted. And then one thing to add is that this project is really historic for Idaho because we've never had anything like this where the youth are the ones in charge of this participatory budgeting project, so this is really historic for Idaho and Meridian. So a little bit about the timeline of this project. Councilman Borton began to champion this idea when he got back from NLC with the help of Todd Lavoy, the CFO, Ken Corder, the MYAC advisor, and support of Mayor Tammy. And then this idea was presented in last April of 2015 to MYAC just to give us a little bit of a chance to figure out what it was and really brainstorm ideas. And then leadership for this project took form, which the leadership for this project was the Government Affairs Chair and Vice Chair, and our Vice Chair was Tyler Ricks. So we were the ones in charge of being the leadership for this project. And then from September of this year through January, MYAC we were making the participatory budget a subcommittee in government affairs, and then guidelines were made. And how these guidelines came about were how the youth really wanted to step forward with this project, and how we decided what ideas would and would not work. And some of the things that we came up with was that we couldn't have any new employees. So the money that we had, we couldn't hire an employee. And it had to be a one-time expense only, and it had to be within the city limits, and it had to be beneficial to all residents in Meridian. And the last one was no adult input, which definitely was a little bit hard for our advisors, but it was definitely it was amazing to see just the students working on this project and coming up with the ideas without any of the adults' experience trying to help us guide to the best idea. So definitely no adult input during this time. And then the goals for this project were discussed in MYAC. So all the students came up with what they wanted to see with this project, and afterwards what they wanted the community to feel from this project. And then the first ideas were compiled. So in January of 2016, approximately 52 ideas were compiled. We got a lot of different ideas. Some were really, really cool, out of the box thinking. We had some that we wanted a meet and greet ball pit, kind of, where the balls had like ideas to talk to people and you could meet different people. And then we had one person who wanted robot recycle bins, which really cool, but maybe a little bit of a safety hazard. And then in February of 2016, the youth leadership was able to consolidate the project ideas down to just 17. And how we did this was looking at which ideas really fit within the guidelines and which ones would be the most beneficial to the community as a whole. So then our project ideas in March, MYACers looked at the top 17 choices, discussed them, and then voted on their top 5. And before they even voted, we had all the people who came up with those ideas talk a little bit about what they thought this idea could be and how it could benefit the city of Meridian as a whole. And we also had other MYACers stand up and give pros and cons to this idea. That way we could really see this idea as a whole and laid out. So what we came up with for our top 5 choices that MYACers voted on were increasing recycling bins. However, these weren't the ones that were ones that could be automotive kind of ones, and then a BMX track in a park, and an adult/teen obstacle course/tree gym, bike checkouts from the library, and the last one was a Meridian greenbelt/pathway improvements. And then in April, MYACers again discussed the top 5 ideas and came down to the adult/teen obstacle course/tree gym for their final pick of what they wanted to use this money for. So how MYAC moved forward from there is we have been working with the city staff and have picked out not only high quality equipment, but an amazing location. And the location that we found was Tully Park. And why we wanted to put this in Tully Park was because, first of all, it's next to a playground. The location that we have is next to a playground. There's lots of privacy, and it's along one of the most used walkways in Meridian, which is the Bud Porter. And it's very accessible. I'll show you a picture right here where the circle is that says outdoor gym. That's where we want to put it. And it has a lot of privacy actually for a park, because on the back side there's a fence, and then it's closed off by bathrooms on the other side. So it's great for parents or older siblings to take their younger siblings or daughters and sons to the playground and then be able to work, yet still keep an eye on them. And it's also great because of the route it's on. If families want to get out and go for a run or a walk and then go ahead and work out together, it's right along that path, so it's a great location. And then the equipment that you're seeing is the equipment that we are hoping to get for this area. So the plans for the gym was that originally our budget was $20,000, but because of how amazing our community members and businesses in the community are, and the relationships that the City of Meridian have been able to have, CBH Homes and CMG have offered to pour the concrete for this pad needed for this project for free, allowing more money to be used for the gym equipment. And then as well, MYAC voted that the proceeds that we got during Ball at the Hall would be used for the participatory budget, which was $1,000. So now we had $21,000 to bring to the project. However, the equipment in total to get all the 9 pieces would be $32,000. So right now we're moving forward as is and buying a couple of the pieces that we can. And we like to call the pieces that we're buying the mirror pieces, the ones that are going to be used the most. So the biceps, triceps, some back and some leg ones and core. And then we're looking to also have partnerships with Axiom Gym or bodybuilders to see if they'd be able to help fund a little bit more for the rest of the equipment. So what MYAC is asking is that City Council further fund the participatory budgeting. So each year MYAC will be able to create a new project and have the youth's voices heard each year. And some of the benefits that would be included would be budgeting skills for youth and anybody involved in it, a positive engagement between city government and the youth of Meridian. It was amazing to see all the MYACers discuss why they wanted certain ideas, and they also took the stance of the city as well. And to see that engagement between the two city and the youth was amazing. And then also the participants owning their community, and this goes back to a little bit between the relationship between the city and the youth. When our youth are going to be able to put ideas out into their community, they're going to want to come back when they get older and show their kids or the next generations what they were able to do with the help of their city. And then also community pride. This is a big one as well. The youth are going to be able to see what they did and show other cities that their city really listened to what they had to say and what they wanted in their city. And now because of that, there's a new tree gym in their park. So that's what MYAC is asking. And then some discussion or questions that we're having is the funding gap and ideas for funding. And that is all.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Council, any questions, discussion? Questions about the process? Yes, Mr. Kavner.
Great presentation. Mike, please. Sorry, thank you. Question for you about the decision-making process. Do you think had MYAC been aware of the cost to fund the total gym, would that have remained their decision, knowing that you wouldn't have been able to afford the entire piece, or was that discussed prior to making a decision?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavanagh. So one of the big things, and I believe a big thing that contributed to the success of this project was that we didn't totally know all the costs of what we could or could not do. And that's why we got so many ideas that were out of the box thinking. And I believe even if the students knew that they wouldn't be able to get the whole set right away, I think they'd look at the past of MYAC and what we've been able to accomplish and realize that we would be able to get partnerships within the city, and down the road we would be able to finish this tree gym. So I think they would have gone forward with this as well.
Madam Mayor, additional question. Cheyenne, taking everything that you've learned this past year, if MYAC were to do this again, what are the things that you would do differently?
I think I would definitely have more discussion and debate within MYAC, and maybe put up the goals in like a big bulletin board maybe when they're trying to come up with the ideas, because at the start we had about 52 ideas, and some of the ideas didn't totally follow the guidelines that we had, which was really hard. And it would have been great to make sure that they knew the guidelines and the goals for this project all the way, to be able to maybe take their ideas and tweak them a little bit to fit the guidelines and the goals. But overall, I think this process went great, and it was an amazing experience, and the youth in it were so excited because this was the first ever participatory budgeting project in Idaho, so they were really excited to be a part of it, and our advisors and were amazing with their passion too, so I think altogether it was a great experience.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Borton.
Madam Mayor, Cheyenne, it was a fantastic process you went through, and Todd and Ken and the rest of the leadership team within MYAC. A couple of the things to Councilman Kavanaugh's question, the process started somewhat relatively later in the year, and one of the things we talked about were to go forward is to utilize the fall and the winter months a little bit better, to start the process earlier, to allow MYAC to vet, to your point, some of the questions whether an item is within the budgeted allocation or not. That would certainly help. Another thing that I would want to highlight, which I thought was really impressive, of all of the elements of this, that MYAC, as the democratic decider, the voice of these items, was Election Day. In particular, it was kind of fascinating to watch. The leadership team, made the ballots, ran an actual election here. I mean, they were lined up to vote for the first time. It was really neat to see the youth's participation, and you can't highlight enough the amount of debate that occurred between the kids on items that I think a lot of adults might not ever have thought of. And it was a great demonstration of just being silent and watching a part of our community express a voice and tell us what was most important to them that we might not have suggested. So it was really an impressive kind of reverse look at making sure our city provides its citizens what it wants. So, and it was very vigorously debated, so it was fascinating to watch. And it was both Ken and Todd in finance did a lot of the back end question answering for MYAC, helping vet from 52 down to 17 was done with, and with the mayor's involvement as well to ensure that those guidelines were complied with. But beyond that, the youth expressed their voice, which is exactly what it was intended to do. So the hope is that it's included in this next year's budget cycle, and that MYAC will continue to refine and improve the process, continue to report back to council and the mayor those improvements, and continue to provide that voice for youth going forward.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Observing this process was it was hard sometimes to be the adult on the sideline, not saying anything. I admit that. But it was really cool seeing how our teen leaders took the bull by the horn and figured it out and came up with their own process to do this. And I think across the country, we see a disengagement of our younger demographic in the political process. And this is one way to really engage them, to show the power of the voice, to show that their voice does matter, and it is taken serious. So this also shows, I think, the value of going to the National League of Cities or something outside the state even, in discovering things that are going on around the country that we can pick and choose from and see how that applies to our community. And having Councilman Borton bring this back and having MYAC be the pilot case in seeing how we can better engage our community in budgeting type of activities to make sure our community feels engaged and owns the decisions that are being made up here is pretty powerful. So this is exciting. I hope to see it continue, and I hope to see it expand into other areas of our budgeting process. And I've kind of mentioned this to the director of fun over there, is as the Parks Commission looks at filling in many of our neighborhood and community parks with community identity, is engaging the neighborhoods and the citizens that are around that park, that associate with those parks, and being part of the decision-making process of what should they be, what should they look like. So there's many opportunities that our youth showed us that we can do with this kind of a approach to budgeting. and that's exciting. So Cheyenne, thank you. I look forward to having you lead the group as a whole and see who takes us on as a government affairs committee if the council decides to move it forward and see how we do it. I stand committed to helping make sure that the project that was envisioned by the youth council is built as they had envisioned it, and we're thrilled to get community partners that have stepped up and said, what a cool approach, what a cool idea, and we want to make sure our youth also realize what they have envisioned. So thank you for your presentation, and I think council will have a discussion next week, Mr. Borton,
Certainly,
on your proposal.
certainly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
Okay, there were no items moved from the consent agenda, so we'll move into department reports. So we have a continued discussion from community development that never started because we got so late in the evening, but it's all things transportation, and I'll turn this over to Caleb.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As the mayor just pointed out, this has been pushed back about 3 weeks, but as you're also aware, things in the transportation world, projects and studies and plans don't move that quickly anyway, so most of the information in the memo I provided a few weeks ago is still relevant and up to date. I am going to highlight some things, though, that are in the memo, and there are a couple of new items that I'd like to bring to light since I was on the agenda here a few weeks ago. But again, I'm going to be working off of the memo that's in your packet, and I don't plan on touching on all of those projects that are listed, but if you have any questions on those, please feel free to interrupt and we can discuss. The first thing I want to just touch on is a couple of good news issues. So Franklin Black Cat to 10 Mile is on the 90-day bid list at ACHD. This is somewhat turned out to be a little bit of a problem project in that they've had some utility issues and relocation issues. They've had some condemnation issues that have gone into litigation. And so the project cost has gone up, but it's good for our community in that the roadway will be widened, including the intersection at Franklin and Black Cat, and that's on the 90-day bid list. So just wanted to highlight that for you. And then real similarly, the Ustick corridor, due to some of the reallocation of funds and in no short thanks to House Bill 312 that was passed last year, ACHD was able to move some things around in their maintenance world that freed up some things to get the Ustick corridor constructed a little bit sooner than what they were originally anticipated. So that is also on the 90-day bid list, and that includes the widening of the Ustick Meridian intersection and then the 2 miles going back east and west of that intersection. So that's on the 90-day bid list. So both those projects should be in construction here later in the fall through the winter. Both are about a year-long time frame for construction. So some good news there that, I mean, it's good and bad, right? It's going to be a construction zone for about a year, but it's widening of the infrastructure that's much needed there. Moving on to page 2 of my memo, Eagle Road. I want to just highlight a couple of things there, particularly that Center Cal is looking to move forward with the records extension, and they've gone on record saying that will happen this year. The northern section of that, so behind Lowe's, going up to Bald Cypress and Boise, which is just on our boundary, ACHD is actually constructing that. The notice to proceed was last week, so contractors working on that. So this would be connecting from River Valley, where the apartments are, Regency, making that connection north beside the backside of Norco and Rose Hours, Les Schwab up to Ustick. So that makes that critical connection, and that'll be done this year as well. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Then moving on to page 3, and I thought I would just spend a minute or two here just kind of walking you through this, but this has happened in the interim since June 21st. ITD on July 1st did publish their draft ITIP, which is their 5-year transportation improvement plan, and are looking for public comment. So I know the mayor's office, Ken Corder in particular, is working to get the word out to some stakeholders about commenting on this. I want to highlight a few of the projects. The one really I think that Ken's focused on is, it's kind of hard to see at this level, but ITD is looking at widening Chinden Boulevard, the first mile of the corridor, so between Eagle and Locust Grove, and I can zoom in, but I've got this just in our areas so you can see all the projects, in 2021. So the way that breaks down, so it'd be adding 2 lanes, so it'd be a 4-lane facility. Again, construction in 2021 at a cost of about $7.5 million. That includes preliminary engineering, design, right-of-way, construction. So they would start design this next year in 2017, acquire right-of-way in 2019, and then again construct in 2021. I know we're looking to have them advance that calendar, that schedule a little bit more to get it constructed as soon as possible. But there are some things that have to happen, before you can just go into construction. You got to design the project and have the land to build it on. But just wanted to call that to your attention. And then also in 2020, they do have $500,000 to redo the Linder Road Railroad crossing. So that one would be this project right here. So again, that's a reconstruction project of the existing, and that crossing is in pretty dire straits, and so that's a good thing. But it's more of a maintenance project. 2017 in the draft ITIP is $400,000 to replace their maintenance yard facility that's located over at the Meridian Road interchange. So that's something we've been working on for years, is to try to get them to find another location for their maintenance facilities, and they're moving it to Canyon County. So that's good news as well. So in the ITIP, that $400,000 would be to purchase additional lands in Canyon County for their maintenance facility.
And Caleb, that was moved up because there is an opportunity to purchase the land. It will be on the next Compass agenda, so that gives authorization of ITD to move forward.
Yep. And then there is also another project where my cursor is to realign Pollard, so beginning to do some additional improvements on the State Highway 16 2026. And if you click on any of these, you can get the details of what the project is, how much it costs, in what year, that type of a thing. So again, you're looking at about a $350,000 construction cost to realign Pollard for local access in there. So those are just a few of the projects. I would encourage you, if you're so inclined, to go to ITD's website. It's not the most intuitive thing. Here's their homepage. There is an icon, a hyperlink to the draft ITIP. You can read the whole thing. I was just on this interactive web-based tool, so if you click on that, you can look at a map of the projects, but they also have projects assorted by district, so you could just look at District 3. If you want to see everything in District 3, you could go there. I will just point out, if you use the map, it's not the most user-friendly thing in the world, imagine that, but it isn't. So you got to make sure that you got the slider bar, you're choosing all the years, or if you're just curious about what's going on in the latter part, you can do that. But just the baseline, when you open it up, only shows 2017, so you got to kind of manipulate it a little bit, and you can zoom in and out. But anyway, so I'm going to move right along unless there's any other questions on the draft ITIP that's out there. And again, so that public comment period is open now through the end of the month, July 30. So would encourage you to at least support US 2026, if not ask for additional miles and intersections to be included and to accelerate the schedule. That's kind of the message we're looking for there. I had Idaho Avenue placemaking highlighted in the memo, but we'll talk about that here at 5:30 when the MDC board can join you all, and I'll highlight that a little bit more, some more details. Transit, I just wanted to give you a heads up that the work group that was formed here 4, 5, 6 months ago does have a recommendation and is looking to present. So there will be a final meeting of that group this Friday, and then on Monday they're going to present their recommendation to the Meridian Transportation Commission, and then 8 days after that they'll be before you presenting that same information with hopefully a recommendation from the Transportation Commission on what to do with what was the monies for the Saturday Fun Bus that's been what they're calling a lifestyle center or lifestyle service these days. So a little bit more information on that, but just a little teaser for you that on the 26th, VRT will be here to present their proposal for some of the dollars in FY16 that remain unspent, to spend some of that before the end of the year, and then into 17 and possibly 18, what they would do with a lifestyle type of service, which is basically seniors and those with disabilities, geared towards providing rides to those folks. I will just highlight, although I won't go into details unless you all want to, that the ACHD 2016 CIP update task force has done its job. Every 4 years, ACHD updates its 20-year capital improvement plan, and they established this work group that helps to guide that work. It's made up of commissioners, members of the CICAC, commercial and real estate developers, city staff, and again, we've been meeting monthly since January of 2015. And just recently completed our work. The public comment period for that, for the CIP, is anticipated July 15 through August 17th. Just real quick, that the CIP is part of the goal there. So again, it's a 20-year roadway improvement plan, but it also sets your impact fees. So, and basically there's no change. There was a slight decrease in the residential impact fees. Commercial basically stayed the same. There were a couple of different categories that went down slightly, but none of the impact fee categories increased in the draft anyways. So again, that public comment period is going to be open up here later this week through the middle of August. And there's some more information again in the memo if you want to look at that or have any questions about it. Feel free to contact me on that one. And then I did want to spend a couple of minutes as well just going through the Eagle Road, and this is all in your in the packet, in the memo. I'm going to zoom to a map on the Eagle Road project development that we've been working on with Compass. So city staff applied about a year ago to ask Compass for, and I'm sorry, the orientation of this map, I'll kind of use it here in just a second. Ask Compass for some help on Eagle Road in particular, in that we saw some promise in the corridor being a potential corridor for bikes and pedestrians, and yet that lacked those improvements. It was kind of hit and miss with some pathways and sidewalks and other areas that didn't have any. So we said, can you help us kind of scope this and figure out how we can, kind of chunk this away and eventually have a corridor that has continuous pedestrian facilities. So what you see on the far right, so north is up on this, so Chinden Boulevard is the northernmost boundary, and the city of Boise also was a part of this. Not originally, but to make the terminus work, we invited Boise to the table, and they participated in this. But the northern terminus is Chinden Boulevard, and the southern terminus is Overland Road. So there we broke that up into segments, roughly half mile each, although if there was a roadway that did that, we also made that a segment, so some of them aren't exactly half mile. But I think there were 19 or 20, maybe it's just 18 different segments, and basically looked at each segment and evaluated. So if you look in your packet, there were a bunch of criteria and elements that were looked at by Keller and Associates. Feasibility of construction, cost of construction, how much of the corridor already has facilities, whether it be 5-foot sidewalk, 10-foot detached pathway, what's the condition of the existing facilities, and there's this big matrix that kind of goes through all that and scores and ranks the different criteria. Well, cut to the punchline, there were 4 different segments that this first phase recommended Compass move forward with in preparing phase 2, and all 4 of those segments were in Meridian. There's segments 5, 8, 10, and 12, and let me see if we can, so yeah, 5 is the segment, I think it actually scored as the 4th highest, but this is R.C. Willey. So Franklin to Pine was in the top 4. Segment 8 is the Blue Cross segment. So in front of Blue Cross up to Krispy Kreme, Fairview Eagle. That one, I believe, was the number 1 highest priority scoring and ranking on the criteria. Segment 10 is the segment just north of that. So this is the vacant field in front of Kleiner, but it provides the connectivity between some of the other, to make the connections work. This would be a big gap. And then finally, segment 12 is by River Valley, so River Valley Drive up to U-Stick. So those 4 segments scored the highest when going through all those criteria, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I listed a few. And so what they'll do is they'll take the next step is to take those 4 segments and develop concept designs. And I was just going to read to you some of that work. So the consultant will prepare schematic, sketches, and other documentation needed for construction cost estimating and programming purposes. So planning level opinions of probable construction cost for each segment. Cost estimates will have detail for programming purposes, including individual bid items, quantities, the unit cost for inclusion in each segment, and ITD Form 1150. So essentially what this does is they're getting ready to go out to bid and look for grants. So this is great in that they're going to put that all in a report, basically have it ready for application, looking for funding sources. So this is good news. It doesn't, there's 18 different segments. It's just a quarter of those basically in this first chunk, but that's based on how much money Compass has budgeted to do this type of work. We fully expect to go after the next 2, 3, 4, 5 segments after these 4 are prepared for grants. We'll keep our eyes peeled for other funding sources. May come back to you with some local match in the future, I imagine, if we find that grant opportunity that seems like it's a good fit. So I should have started with this. I'm sorry, but I'm going to insert it now. The idea here, and this is part of our master pathway plan, is that this is a 10-foot wide detached facility that is part of the city's, again, master pathways plan. So that's what we're trying to get to here, is a continuous 10-foot wide detached pathway. Bikes, rollerblades, walkers, everyone can use there, since there aren't going to be bike lanes on the state highway. So just want to provide you that update on that project. That's kind of exciting that's moving forward as well. So I believe with that, Madam Mayor, those are the projects I wanted to highlight for you. And if there's any questions on any of the projects listed or not listed in my memo, I would stand for those questions now.
Thank you, Caleb. Council, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7B is under our fire department, so I'll turn this over to our Deputy Chief Jones.
Council, good afternoon. Hope everybody's well. The Fire Department Prevention and Public Education Division is requesting an amendment to the FY16 budget in the amount of $21,837. These funds will be used for the purchase of car seats, fire prevention educational materials, and training for car seat installation technicians. The cost of this the cost of this amendment will be partially offset by donations that we have already received from Light My Fire Incorporated, Family Advocacy Program, and Meridian residents. The remainder of this amendment will be funded by a grant the department has received from the ITD Office of Highway Safety in the amount of $13,000. And the way that works is once we purchase the equipment, we submit receipts to ITD, and then they will refund or reimburse us for that. So with that, it's pretty simple. We've done this before, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. okay,
and note that it is 21,837.
Yes, ma'am.
Not the 27,837. Any questions from council?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton.
if none, I would move that we approve the budget amendment requested at item 7B for fire public education in an amount not to exceed $21,837.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Aye. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Pam. You do such a good job with this program. Item 7C is under our Public Works Department and our HR.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Crystal and I are here representing this issue. Wanted to bring forward some background information before we presented the amendment to you. In late 2015, the Public Works Department had noticed that, or had become concerned that some of our technical and professional positions didn't appear to be competitive in the market. This was realized from a number of different observations. First, vacant to fill times, jobs that we had made, or position offers that we had given to folks that had been turned down, and then looking at generally spot checking some of the different market data that we had evaluated in and around the local market. We tested that market, as I mentioned, and brought forward these concerns to the mayor and the council, our council liaison, who encouraged us to talk with the HR department to have a closer look at this. So I communicated these observations to our human resources professionals, and they helped us develop a market analysis. We worked together to develop an approach, identify the market analysis tool that was going to be utilized, and a total of 16 positions were identified for market review under this work. Job descriptions were updated in our department. They were revised and sent to the human resources staff, who reviewed those job descriptions and then also sent them off to BDPA, which is a private human resources consulting firm that evaluated them against a market equity and classification, mostly classification and equity. We worked with a market tool called PayScale, which is actually quite a phenomenal tool. The Human Resources Department had actually already begun vetting out and selected PayScale as a tool of choice for reviewing market position, or the market of positions throughout the city. We happened to be the first department, I think, to utilize PayScale, and I have to tell you that I was quite impressed with the excuse me, data and the integrity and the results of the product. Just so you know, PayScale, and I'm sure Crystal and HR can expand on its validity, but PayScale has job matches for over 54 million different profiles throughout the United States. PayScale recommends a 75% job match in order to make valid the results. I'm very pleased to say that our job match results were 95% for the city, which shows a very strong correlation in regards to the results that were produced. So utilizing the updated job descriptions, the BDPA reclassification and equity reviews, and the PayScale market analysis reports, human resources staff applied the city's salary administration guidelines and identified 8 positions of the 16 that were requested for review that require salary adjustments due to job reclassifications, the market analysis data, or internal equity alignments. The impact of the budget amendment that's been presented to you is $29,924 for the remainder of this fiscal year. That gets us through the next 3 pay periods of fiscal year 16. But I wanted to point out that the ongoing costs are $119,694. Both those numbers include insurance, benefits, as well as taxes. So there's what we call fully loaded. So the joint recommendation for Human Resources and Public Works is to essentially request approval of the budget amendment for $29,924 and the ongoing expense of $119,694 thereafter, to bring these positions in alignment with the market as well as our compensation guidelines and policies. If the council does approve this budget amendment, the Public Works Department will remove the $225,000 enhancement placeholder for market analysis, which is included in the budget for fiscal year 17. You might recall when we spoke with you last month about that was merely a placeholder. We had no idea what the data was going to show. Fortunately, it's much less, and more positions are actually in alignment than we had initially thought. So that's the good news. The better news is, again, it's going to cost us less than we had anticipated. Also, your favorable consideration of this amendment will allow for the Human Resources Department to make a slight modification in its reclassification requests and financial impacts associated with them for the Public Works Department, since 2 of the positions that were recommended for reclassification that they've identified are already included in this budget amendment, so no additional monies would need to be moved in or utilized for that purpose. So you'll see 2 slight budget adjustments, and we'll present that to you next, well, actually in a couple weeks, maybe 1.
Yeah, 1.
Great. So with that, we would stand for any questions and ask for your favorable consideration of the amendment as proposed.
So, Crystal, I think you like these kind of presentations where you don't have to say anything, right?
I love them, but I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Council, any questions for either Tom or Crystal?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borton?
just real quick, to either who can describe, when you make reference to a 95% match, what metrics from a particular job is matching to what pay scale has?
It's actually based on actual job description and job summary with the essential job duties and tasks. That's what we look for a match in when you come up with a 95 or 75% higher, in this case 95% job match.
In the, Madam Mayor, in the description of what their primary duties are, it matches that closely?
Yeah, I think it's that as well as education, experience, licenses, credentials, all of that. So that was what's so impressive about this particular tool. I mean, we were pretty well blown away, and we were fortunate. I mean, we happened to be the first department, so we were a little bit nervous about using the tool. But after reviewing its methodology and all of the, integrity and method or process used behind the scenes, we became very comfortable very quickly. And quite frankly, just to let you know, we validated against 2 other data sources. So we used the Northwest Data Exchange numbers as well as the American Water Works Association salary surveys that were just released for the Pacific Northwest and Rocky Mountain sections. And I mean, it's almost a perfect match. So it was actually really well supported. We found it to be, I mean, quite accurate.
And did I remember this in terms of other cities have been looking at these same categories as well?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This has been a struggle regionally for us, and I think Human Resources we kind of been talking with colleagues who found that to be the case, but that was corroborated by Crystal and her staff's work in talking directly with HR personnel at the other cities locally, and they've been making, matter of fact, they've been making adjustments a bit ahead of us, and that put even more pressure on us to have a much closer look at what was going on, and I'm pleased that we were able to find what we did and to get in alignment those positions that were out of alignment in this project.
Any other questions from council?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner?
Tom, and maybe even Crystal, I recognize that this is only one piece of an overall puzzle, so how confident are we that by making sure that our salaries are more in alignment with where they need to be, that's going to close that gap, Tom, that I know that your department experiences on a fairly regular basis? It's a challenge.
Well, I'll speak as a director of the department, and then if there's a human resources angle, I'm sure Crystal will follow up. I would say I'm very confident with the positions that have been evaluated that they're to market now with this project. The reality is, however, we have a lot more jobs in public works than the 16 that have been evaluated. So our challenge is to try to identify, are there any other positions that may have we might have similar concerns with. These are the ones where the biggest pressure in the department are currently. There is some pressure in other areas of the organization, particularly down in operations, that I have concerns about. It wasn't part of this project. We bit off what we could reasonably chew in this. I think to the larger question, kind of going forward, we have to be diligent as a department and even as a city with regard to our pay administration policies, because what happens is when we're not, we might fall behind the market in certain positions or in certain job families, and when that happens, that exacerbates the difference between those later numbers that you find and the numbers that you're paying now. Different markets pay different and fluctuate differently. If you look at, for example, public works engineering, and you liken that to IT, those two industries tend to rebound from market situations much more quickly, and in some cases actually regress much more quickly as well. Whereas in other positions, you might have police officers and parks, and I'm kind of speaking out of my element here, but may not fluctuate quite so much. And the reason that is because there's a large private sector influence on the IT and the engineering worlds than there is, say, in parks and police. So without misstepping, on that, maybe I'll turn over to Crystal.
Yeah, actually, Tom did a real nice job explaining that as well, so thank you very much for that. Obviously, from an HR perspective, to answer your question, Luke, about moving forward and looking at that citywide, we would want to make sure that we have a planned approach to look at that, and that we're using a consistent method, approach, and application that is in alignment with our salary administration guidelines, and I know that we have efforts for that next year.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I move we approve the budget amendment for Public Works salary adjustments not to exceed $29,924.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And members of the council, I know my staff are very grateful and are very appreciative as well, so thank you.
Thank you. Item 7D is also under Public Works, and I imagine that Warren is taking this one.
Yes, excuse me, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I will be addressing this one. So you may remember that we had some discussion here in the past year or so about the water and sewer main extensions in South Meridian, and we have a project that is a capital project for this year that's going to extend a water laying down Amity Road from Locust Grove out to Meridian, and then from Meridian down to essentially the Meridian Heights and Kentucky Ridge development down there. We're going to go right by Mary McPherson Elementary School, and they would very much like to have city services, at least water at this point, because that's all that'll be going by there. So we're actually before you tonight seeking your permission to go ahead and develop essentially an agreement with Mary McPherson to extend water services to them outside of city limits. They're not currently contiguous with the city limits. They're not far from it, but they're not contiguous. But they would like service. We do think it's the right thing to do, and so we're here to get your concurrence to move forward with the agreement and make that happen.
Thank you, Warren. Any questions, discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
seeing no question or discussion, I move that we allow the Public Works Department to reach an agreement with Mary McPherson Elementary or West Ada School District for service of water to their building.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the request from Public Works on item 7D. Any discussion by council? Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer. Aye. Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Thank you, Warren. Item 7E is under Purchasing and Parks Department, and I see I'm turning this over to Keith Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. We're here tonight to ask for approval of a AIA construction management at risk agreement for the Hillsdale Park project, which we've brought before you in the past and had discussions on. I just wanted to do a report on this because this is the city's first construction manager at risk agreement. In the past, we've done just the standard construction manager as a advisor. And the benefits of the CMR agreement is that once we've bid our trades and subs, the construction manager locks in his price and guarantees us a guaranteed maximum price. And the ownership or the risk then transfers from the city to the construction manager as he manages the project. There's 4 documents that are included in the CMR agreement. It's the A133 base agreement. That sets the percentage for the CM fee, and we've agreed to 5.25% on this project. That will be 5.25% of the general conditions, and then the bids that are received. once we open it. The A142 Exhibit B agreement, which sets the construction or pre-construction services at a fixed fee of $17,350. That'll take us all the way from assistance during design and all the way through the bid opening. They actually prepare the bids and open the bids. And the only city involvement at that point is just we attend the bid opening and witness the bid opening. With that, then they do we will set the fee at that point, the guaranteed maximum price, which is the Exhibit A to the A133 document, and then the A201 is also another AIA document which has the general conditions and the T's and C's. With that, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Keith. Council, any questions?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Byrd?
Excuse me. Not a question, just a statement. I think this is about time that we get in line with the construction management at risk deal. This is, I mean, I've been surprised that it's the public that has been going it the other way. The private has been at this forever, and now I see the public is starting to, and I think it's a very good move on our part. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor,
Ms. Lowell Roberts.
I move we approve the construction management at risk agreement, excuse me, for Hillsdale Park project not to exceed $17,350 as stated in 7E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this request on item 7E. Any discussion from council?
Madam Mayor, if I may, the 5.25% is also stated in the A133 document, so it sets that at 133. We will. I assume we are going to bring the fixed fee back when we after we've opened bids. Okay.
Thank you, Keith. If there's no discussion, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ayes, motion carried. Thank you. Item 7F is under our clerk's department, so I'm going to turn this over to J.C. Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm here today to talk to you about our updated record retention schedule that you have on for approval today for Resolution 161149. So, history of record retention for Meridian. The Idaho State Legislature mandated that cities adopt a record retention schedule in 2007. At this point, AIC provided a generic schedule to all of the cities, which we in turn adopted to be compliant with that requirement. We updated and customized the schedule in 2012, 14, and 15. The benefits of this is obviously it improves our internal efficiencies, compliance, and then transparency for our Public Records Request Act. But there's been some changes with the legislature this year, most notably for records requests, or excuse me, for records retention, it's House Bill 443. Some main changes for House Bill 443 is that it provides a definition for what historic records are. It's a phrase that was used a lot with previous legislation, but the definition was really broad and left a lot of kind of gray area for each city to interpret differently. So House Bill 443 narrows that scope for us. The other main change is that it allows cities to maintain and retain permanent records electronically instead of hard copy. So all of the records that we have in the clerk's office is a really good example of that. Minute books, land use, those files that we do retain permanently. Once we've verified that they're scanned in and we have them electronically, we have the ability to destroy the paper copy, which is pretty huge, I think, for transparency and for ease of access with those records. Another change is that it no longer requires that cities provide a list of records to destroy for semi-permanent records. You guys all have seen those. We approved those resolutions at City Council, and anytime that you're approving a resolution to destroy records, we are then in turn are going to the State Historical Society. We're providing the list to them and offering them the opportunity to maintain the records themselves, which they don't want to. They want to keep the historic records, but they don't want the small things that we are hoping to destroy. They don't want our 5 years worth of emails, that type of thing. So it allows us to cut the Historical Society out of that process and allows them the ability to streamline their internal operations as well. And then obviously it did some language cleanup just to match current laws so that the terms that are used in all sections of the law regarding record retention is consistent. And the bill takes effect July 1st, which is why we have this update on today. So as far as specific to what we've got going on here with the city, I like to call it the ripple effect. When we make organizational changes at City Council, those happen instantly here. It's one motion, and while theoretically it shouldn't be a huge issue operationally, it really is. It's specifically this year we had information services, the division of that, and then the creation of support services. A few years ago, we had public works, where we split off the building department of part of public works and created community development. Each time that happens, there's operational processes that take place on the department level, specifically with where records live and who maintains those records. And these are updates that are fairly large organizational changes that are not reflected under our current record retention policy. The other hole that we saw with our current record retention policy is when it came to committees, commissions, and boards. There's a lot of, we have our main commissions, historic preservation, arts, parks, those types of things, but then there's other committees like the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, and other ad hoc boards where internal staff are maintaining records. Some internal staff are maintaining a lot of records in their support of these commissions or committees, and there is no clear definition in our current policy as to what to do with those records or even how to instruct commissioners or members on committees how to maintain their records. And we noticed some inconsistencies across all departments in how the retention schedule was being applied, how it was drafted, language that was used, those types of changes. We also added administrative sections. The reality is that everything a city employee creates is a record. The Post-it note that you create, the scratch piece of paper that you have, you take a notepad to a meeting and you jot notes down. If you keep it in the building, it's a record. And what we did by adding the administrative section is we have called out those records, those very simple, everyday, part of business type records, and we've provided a retention period that is actually operationally appropriate. So it allows staff to bring that Post-it note back to their desk, cross it off, and then throw it away without having to go to council and get the approval or needing any more of a formal process for that. So, like any policy changes, management is the key to our success. Anytime that we're talking about creating a policy change at this level, getting upper management into that conversation is crucial, and you have to do that early on. The other thing is that this type of project can be very time-consuming and difficult to quantify. It's one of those things that when you have an admin in the basement for a couple of hours sorting through boxes of records, until that project is done, there's really no measurables. So in a time where we're really focusing on trending and being able to quantify our products, how many records requests we're processing or how many development applications we're processing or permits are being issued, that type of thing. This is one of those projects that until it's done, it's very difficult to even see the effort there. So we decided to have the conversation at the director level and make sure that directors all the way, management from the very top to the bottom, knew what was happening so that the admins were able to get the support that they needed to perform this task. And part of the benefit of that, like we've talked about, is compliance. it's transparency. Specifically, we've talked about effective public record request responses. So when we receive a record request in our office, or police does or fire does, we have 3 business days to respond to that citizen. Well, if you're digging through a sea full of paper files in the basement, 3 days goes by really, really fast. And not knowing who owns the record or what we're supposed to do with the record makes that whole process really clunky and just not effective. So again, that's the big sell, is that our goal is always that customer service. And then it's important that our management also be trained on record retention. It's not helpful for us to have a policy if staff at all levels aren't trained on it the same way. So that was one of the things as we are having those conversations with our management, is that they also understand what your role as council, what their role as managers are, as far as retaining records and then helping get staff all on board with that. So what we went ahead and did with this large change is we pulled together what I like to call our record management expert team. We worked with the department heads to select a record expert from each department. The reality is that I don't speak public works. I don't speak police. I don't speak fire. I talk clerky really well. And I like to leverage the expertise of the team that we have. So by pulling an expert from each department, we were able to leverage all of our compiled knowledge. We started meeting monthly. And what that not only did that build a camaraderie and an ownership to this process, but it helps with consistent distribution of information. When you have a meeting where you come and you have a very set agenda with a specific goal in mind, and each member of that committee is charged with with implementing the policy in their department, you can help to ensure that information makes its way all the way through an organization. One thing that we've learned with emails especially is they seem to die on people's desks and not always get implemented. So having a member of each department on this team was really helpful in getting the information around and then also having that buy-in. And when you have a staff member who's attending a monthly meeting and having those dialogues, they feel like they own a piece of the pie and they feel responsible for the policy and how it's applied in their department. And then they also become the advocates for the policy on the ground. The reality is that record management is kind of exhausting. It's a lot of work, it's time consuming, and it's on top of all of the other tasks that our staff are doing all of the time. But I like to think that record management is something that should happen easily, just like breathing. We shouldn't be thinking about it. It should just be inherent to our culture. And so having these record experts in that committee and then hopefully back on their teams, they're advocating for that and advocating that record management just be part of how we do business. And I'm all for leveraging the talents of people more skilled than I am. So, like we've talked about, why does record retention matter? It's something that the fact that we've had a policy in place for over 10 years and that question still comes up, it's a very abstract concept, and because record retention is so large to wrap your brain around, there's a lot of people, our current staff, who have a really hard time understanding the why there. So we remind them, it's the law. We don't have a choice. It's compliance. We're required to respond to records requests within 3 days. We can ask for additional time, but we try to meet that 3-day benchmark as customer service. So, and with public record requests, we all have an ownership of knowing where the records are for our department and for our position. So the law, that's a big one. It also helps for clarity and understanding throughout the organization. The reality is that, like I said, even though we've had this for 10 years, when I've gone to different departments, I still get kind of that confused, glazed over look in everybody's eyes. I don't know if it's whether because record retention is not exciting or whether people don't understand, but having a record expert team who can go back and speak the language of their teammates and help distribute information has been very successful. And what we've also done is created what we like to call a ghost fifth column. So in the version that you are seeing in your packets, you'll notice that it's 4 columns. We've developed what we like to call the ghost fifth column, basically because we wanted to create a schedule that was based around our operations and not change our operations based around our schedule. It's not, anytime that you have, it's I think 93 pages long, a schedule that is that detailed, if you have to change how you do business to make it effective, it's not working. So we tried to do it the other way and created what we have like to call this ghost fifth column. So what you don't see is this really nice fifth column that we like to call operations. And that column specifically helps departments apply the schedule in their own department. So if there's a form or a template, for example, in this case, this is right out of community developments, it explains where that record is kept. And by doing this, this also helps with consistency as staff changes. So as our admins maybe move on to other projects or we have management changes, this operations column lets the next city staff step in and continue the project and know kind of what the goal is. So we've advocated that each department create this. The other benefit of this is because it's an operations-only column, we can update that as we need to and as business changes without having to come back to council and get your approval every time. You don't need to know when we've moved a file from one department to another. We don't need to waste your time with that. But the reality is that we have to know, those of us that manage the records. So we have this ghost fifth column, which is also new and specific to this update, and it's been very helpful. So, like I said, the big change with House Bill 443 was that we can start working towards moving documents, non-historic paper records, to digital medium. This means that our basements and filing cabinets that are full of records can be changed to something as small as a thumb drive, which will increase our efficiency and public transparency. I would recommend that the record management team work towards drafting an internal SOP or desk manual on how to name electronic records and how to apply the schedule. I think that we need a handbook that can be applied at all levels that helps standardize information, and I would recommend that the team continue to work on this over the next year. So whenever we're talking electronic records, I always tell the team, and I did a training at AIC recently and said the same thing, you have to consider your audience anytime that you're dealing in an electronic world. Whereas I might call a pound sign a hashtag, somebody in another department might call it a pound sign. So when I use phrases like TIFFs or JPEGs or a GIF, OCRing, tags, metadata, those are all phrases that are language that can be challenging to all audiences. And so it's anytime that you're dealing electronic records, you have to really slow down and make sure that you're talking for all of your audience. And because we have different generations at work, and so you have to be sensitive to that audience. And it's important to apply consistent naming. The reason that I'm bringing this up is part of that training more than anything else, because while you all don't necessarily name our files very often, you do meet with directors, and the dialogue needs to happen. Whenever we're talking about implementing a citywide policy, we have to be consistent, and things like consistent naming when you're naming your records, as far as how you go back and access them later, really does matter. So on the training side, that's important for a larger conversation and making sure that that dialogue continues. And reality is we just have to start somewhere. It's something that I'm going to have Barb in our office start working on, looking and checking page by page of our hard copies to make sure they're scanned in, and then hopefully working towards the goal of getting rid of the paper copy and having it stored electronically. And then the goal would be, obviously, at some point, we destroy the paper records. The other thing that there's been talk about whenever you're changing a schedule like this is the thought that if we don't get the schedule right this time, we'll just change it next year. I don't want to do that. Part of what we've run into about updating the schedule annually is that you get somewhat lax in your updates because you think, hey, we'll just fix it next year. And I also don't think it would hold up very well in the instance that we were called to court over a public record request. If we are amending our our record retention schedule every year as we see fit. It doesn't make it really a concrete document, and it's really hard to say that we're abiding by our schedule when we're responding to those public record requests. So our goal with this update is that it be the update. I would say we want to look at it annually and prepare for an update probably every 5 years, as opposed to these annual updates. So I don't think I ever have gotten in front of you without giving a shout out to the team, because we work with some really amazing people. So today is no different. Now I'm going to go on to the kudos section of this, because that's always my favorite part of these. So on our record management team, we had some just really phenomenal employees that are awesome all the time. So we were led by Andrea Pogue in our legal department. She is a record guru. She knows everything about this record retention law. She has received a lot of help from Emily Kane, who actually wrote House Bill 443, which was a wonderful representation of the City of Meridian's skills at the state level. But Andrea spent countless hours coaching me, members of my team, members of our record retention team as a whole. So I definitely did want to pause and just give a shout out. She's amazing. Other members of our team, maybe. Michelle Hill and I worked on that. She's going to continue with J.C. Holman in my absence. Beth Erickson and Kelly Herb from PD, they had a wonderful success during this process in that one of their light duty officers received the okay to work on records in his light duty, so they actually were able to destroy 20 years worth of records, which was wonderful cleanup for them. So they worked really hard on this project as well, getting everything updated. Bruce Freckleton and Kim Tabarini, I'm going to put a pin in that one for a second because I have a rave about them. Laura Lee and Crystal in HR. Danielle Jansen Van Beek, she was with the mayor's office, and I'm sad that we lost her because she was very energetic about learning record retention, and I think was a wonderful asset. Emily Stroud in our fire department, Rachel Myers in Parks and Rec, Hillary Bodner in finance. So this member, maybe one more, maybe. There we go. And then Melanie Hoyt in Public Works. So this is our record management team. These are the employees that met with me every month as we started working through this process. This is the group that I would advocate continues to have the conversation, and these were our advocates on the ground, really fighting this battle, and who took this project on in and above their current workload. It's time consuming. It's a lot of work, and they generously gifted their time to me and were my resources, so I very much appreciate them. So our big update that we did with this group was the community development department. And like I mentioned on one of my very first slides was that ripple effect. So even though community development isn't new, when the building department separated from Public Works and created community development when they joined with planning, there's still a lot of records that have yet to move or be updated or be reviewed following that split and then the formation of that new department. So I attended 26 meetings with community development specifically to talk about this project from April to the end of June, led by Kim Tabarini. If you haven't met Kim, she works in the community development department. Pop over and meet Kim. She's wonderful. And she's new to the city. Is she here? Oh, Kim is here. Kim's amazing. She's new to the city, and she has an energy that department desperately needed. Kim has no trouble telling you exactly the way that it needs to happen, which is perfect. Anytime that you're dealing with that many employees who speak more than one language over a varied employment culture, Kim did a really wonderful job. And she was able to bring her team into compliance and got the buy-in from even some of our most skeptical employees, which I appreciate. And then I know that beyond the 26 that I attended, they had dozens more mini meetings with other members of their team, and she was absolutely committed to this project. So their group was led by Kim Tabarini. Steve O'Brien attended those meetings. Bruce Freckleton, he absolutely backed Kim up on whatever it is that she needed. Brent Bjornson was a wonderful advocate. Bill Parsons was our planning representative. Mindy Smith, she knows everything about everything, by the way. If you need help in community development, she's amazing. And then Bruce Chatterton. I have to give a shout out to Bruce Chatterton because of his leadership in that department. Like I have said with this, policy change starts at the top. And having Bruce go to every single staff meeting and advocate for the record retention policy, advocate for his staff being allowed the time that they needed to make these changes, I think it really speaks volumes about his management style. And then the fact that he was able to attend those larger meetings with my team as well let us know that we have support coming from the directors. So it was very appreciative. And then the other all-star that I like to call out in this project is Melanie Hoyt. And these photos are actually a couple of years old, but they're photos that I've used when we talk to our record management team about the goal of where we should all be going. So a few years ago, the left-hand photo is what the Public Works basement looked like. Mel and a contract employee spent about 2.5 years and cataloged every single record that they have, was able to get them organized. She developed a consistent naming program and is working towards electronic records. And it's one of those things that when we have a public records request that goes to Public Works, Melanie responds within the hour. And it's because her records are organized and she knows what's in it. So this is always kind of like, if in a perfect world, if all of our basements could look like this, that would be a really wonderful goal for us. So, maybe, there we go. The bottom line is that this was a huge project. We started working on it in January. It's not done. I would hope that the record management team would continue to work on it. But the policy that you have in front of you is comprehensive. It's a compilation of months worth of work and multiple staff members committing hours to get that as detailed as it possibly can. And it should function the way that we want the record retention schedule to. It'll be a guide for how to move forward and how to move into more of an electronic era. So hopefully it's the last schedule that you see for a while. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, JC. Council, any questions? Or is your head spinning?
Did you notice I picked a spinning slide for the end? Yeah. Strategic.
Mm-hmm. Because after she gave this, and we had a discussion at the directors' meeting, eyes were glazed over, heads were spinning, and I think we all had a little bit of seasickness or something. Any questions? Very comprehensive.
Madam Mayor,
Chatterton.
really want to recognize JC's leadership and frankly grit on this project. A lot of hard work, but she worked at all levels. If you can imagine queuing up records retention in front of, say, a room full of planners or folks in the building group, originally I think some of them wanted to run from the room, but she kept at it, made it relevant to what they did. She stuck with it. Showed a lot of leadership, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks,
We're in a
Bruce.
better place now.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was not for the weak at heart, huh?
Definitely a team effort. But what I think that really we have gained from that is we do have a record expert in every department. And I think that that is a valued position, and knowing that we have the director's support to continue to train and hone those skills, it's really important. There's a lot of classes you can take on record management and electronic document management, and I would advocate that we keep up on that because it's a beast. But we have employees that are trained and energetic and really committed to see it be successful. So we should use the resources and good people. So
Thank
Madam
you,
Mayor.
JC. Yes, Mr. Nero.
And I was just going to emphasize, I guess, the legal piece that JC talked about is that records litigation is very time-consuming and can get very expensive. And because most of that is driven by your policy and how you retain things, and it's really easy, as she said, for places to say, well, we'll just keep it all. Well, that's fine. You will probably never have enough room to keep everything that you have to keep, but then you have to find it, and that's the problem. And so having a clear and concise, even if it's 92 pages, clarity on how our records are maintained gives us the ability to defend ourselves in those types of cases that, like I said, can get very time-consuming and very expensive. And so it really is a great effort by both JC and the team in getting this put to a place, like she said, where we're not constantly having to tweak it. That's where really errors occur, or that's where problems occur, and we don't really want to be of that habit where simply we'll just fix it next time and we'll just take it again. So it really is a great effort by all of the group to get this where it is for the city. I think it's a good thing. So.
Thank you. Okay, if there is nothing further, we will go to item 7G and look at resolution 16-1149 and ask for council's action. Any discussion, questions on this? Ty, do you have a motion?
I guess I shouldn't I? Madam Mayor, I move we approve resolution 16-1149.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Well, that was pretty monumentous and I guess a good action taken before this next one. J.C. Jones is certainly someone that's not a stranger to council. She's given the strategic updates from the clerk's office, and she sat up here on occasion with us before she was officially appointed as city clerk. But you also saw the heart that she has for the team that she worked with, where she would come in and fill in. I remember one particular night where J.C. Holman, I think, was going to slide underneath the counter, and J.C. Jones came from home and filled in for J.C. so she could go home. But certainly we'll miss J.C. Jones. She has an opportunity to pay attention to her first priority, which is her daughter and her husband, and family first, and she's always practiced that, which we can always appreciate. But the little things always mattered to JC. She showed us how to really treat others. So I'm horrible at this stuff. She had maintained a folder on each of her employees that when they did something nice, she always recognized it at the time, but also filed it away so during evaluations, she could also recognize those things that do matter, because little things did matter to JC. As you could see during the presentation, her attention to detail is pretty amazing, and her tenacity to carry a project through to completion is admirable. She was certainly an example of the Meridian way. She has some of the comments from her staff is that JC was the reason they went the extra mile and wanted to give their best, because she exampled that for them. Her customer service was pretty awesome, and she always seems to have a smile on her face, even though her day might not be going the way that she wanted it to, both in how she felt and maybe who walked through the door at the time. And as you could see from this presentation, she knows how to build teams and to stay focused until the job was done. But I think probably most noteworthy outside of the records management program is how she works with our community. What she did with the Historical Preservation Commission and taking an idea of the history walking tour and bringing it to reality is very noteworthy and has received the recognition from the Association of Idaho Cities and from many other communities around the state. She does make everyone feel appreciated for the role they play, and JC, you'll be missed. But once she is no longer an employee, we hope to have her as a volunteer and continue to tap into her energy, her creativity, and her passions. So thank you for everything you've done. So, council, as we search for our city clerk, who will have big shoes to fill, as did J.C. Jones, we're giving it back to the master over there. J.C. Holman has agreed to fill the gap as we search for our next city clerk. This is an appointed position, and so I would ask for your approval to appoint J.C. Holman as the interim city clerk.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner.
if we vote no, does J.C. Jones stay?
No.
I tried that one. It doesn't work that way.
All right. Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
does that require a motion?
Yes, it does.
I move we approve the interim appointment of J.C. Holman as city clerk.
I have a motion and a second to approve the appointment of J.C. Holman as interim city clerk. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Councilmember Little Roberts.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
And just for the record, this would take effect after July 15th at 5 o'clock p.m. We're not letting her out of the door until 5 p.m. on Friday, the 15th.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
before we move on, J.C., I can't add much more to what Mayor said, but your work ethics are second to none, and we've never asked you to do a job that you didn't do it very efficient and very fast. I mean, employees like you are hard to come by, and we're going to miss you big time. You can be very proud of your work ethic. You'll always be a top dog.
Top dog.
Madam Mayor, if I could add to that, I'm kind of unique in that I got to work with JC in 3 different capacities. One as an employee, second as a volunteer on the Historical Walking Tour project, and lastly as a city council member. And Mayor, to your point, when I close my eyes and I think of the Meridian Way, J.C. Jones has always been the person that comes to mind. You're such an ambassador for our community. You do such great work. You will be very, very missed. And I'm excited to hear that just because maybe you're off the payroll, that doesn't mean that you're no longer working for the city. So we look forward to having you back in some capacity.
Thank you again. Okay, item 8A is a discussion about next week's budget workshop here. It's not a hearing, it's a workshop. But would love to tap into any ideas or identify any questions you might have that we can be prepared for next week. I would invite Todd forward. Maybe
Jenny.
Todd can walk us through, well, Jenny gets to inherit this, but Todd has walked us through this process over the last number of years, and maybe for our newer councils can kind of give you the lowdown of how we have done it in the past and see if you have any suggestions that you would like to see incorporated in moving forward next week.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of council. In the years past, the way we've run the third workshop is we as finance would facilitate the budget process for you. During that day, we'll start off with a presentation with an update of where the budget stands since our last meeting, which was June 8th. A few items have changed since then, so we'll give you an update. If you recall, some of you may recall the supplemental documents. We'll provide you with supplemental documents to amend your current book that you have, so we can bring you up to date. So after we get you guys, the council, updated with the latest and greatest budget summary, we will then discuss some of the revenues changes that have occurred, and then we'll also look at some of the items that have occurred. We'll go through the supplementals with you. And then at that point, what we'll do is most likely, or not most likely, we'll look for your guidance on this, is discuss the kind of the 3 topics that we discussed with you guys during our budget roadshow in April. We discussed merit, we discussed benefits, and we discussed property taxes. We would like to discuss those items and see if we can get a consensus or decision or direction on where we're going to move with those 3 items. Those 3 items have an impact on the overall budget discussions. So once we have those items determined, those will help us determine the final outcomes of the enhancements, the replacements, and so forth. So I think with those 3 items agreed upon, we can finalize the enhancements, and then at the end of July 20th, we will be able to present to the citizens the following week with a balanced budget for fiscal year 2017. Again, as the mayor stated, as the topic is here, we're looking for items, thoughts, suggestions, concerns, questions that we can make sure that we have ready for you for the next meeting on July 20th for the budget discussions for fiscal 17. So with that, that's the general overview of how we've run it. Again, I guess I'll add in another piece real quick. After we discuss those 3 topics of the roadshow, the merit, the benefits, the 3%, we will go through each department's enhancements and ask you for questions at that time. So for an example, if the council had an enhancement starting alphabetically, we would ask you, do you have any questions for the enhancements proposed by the council department? And if there are no questions at that moment, we'll consider that a good approval for the budget for the council division at that time, and we'll move on to the next division. Let's say the next division is finance. Again, we'll ask you, council, at that time, do you have any outstanding questions or concerns for the enhancements proposed by the finance department or any other portion of their budget? If no questions or concerns are given at that time, we'll consider that an approval of the budget proposed to you by the executive branch. So again, after we do that for every division and department, at the end of the day, we should have a balanced budget. We should be able to answer all the questions that you have or concerns that you have for the departments, and all departments will be present to answer any of those questions for you. So that's kind of a general overview of what we've done in the past. Again, we're always looking to improve the process. We're always looking to change the process for the betterment. So again, we stand here or sit here to discuss this with you. So next week's presentation is where we want to go.
I appreciated your correction on standing or sitting, so. Any questions, comments for Todd?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner.
Todd, question for you. Appreciate your proposed agenda. I like that format, personally. I don't know what the rest of the council feels. Question, though, related to, there were a significant amount of unfunded enhancements and the CIP and the Public Safety Fund that were at the end of our budget book. Would you anticipate those unfunded enhancements also being discussed on each particular department's timetable when we're talking about the current funded enhancements? Or are those going to be discussed at a separate time?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavanagh, it's a great question. After we discuss those 3 topics that we presented to you during our roadshow, the merit, the 3%, and the benefits, at that moment in time, if we do go with the direction of the council wishes to allow us to maximize the 3% property tax with our calculation, then we'll go ahead and present that to you, because those will be up for discussion. if the direction is of the council not to allow us to utilize the 3%, which that document refers to, then there's not too much discussion to be had, but we can always discuss those items for other enhancements, but that is up to the council's discussion. So the discussion with the 3% at the beginning of the presentation will really guide where we end up with that unfunded list by the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Borton.
And that the discussion isn't necessarily a all or nothing, a 3 or 0, right? It can be between, which will be part of that discussion.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Borton, you're 100% correct. We can go from 0 to a maximum of 3%, which is allowed by the county and state.
You can't go more than that.
No, I was making the point that you can go less. Will you provide to all of us by Friday that information, all of these updates you're referencing, so we can have time, or at least a day before the meeting, to digest them, and if there's any follow-up questions? Friday'd be great. Good weekend reading.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Borton, we can definitely strive to make it by Friday before we leave for the weekend, that you have all the updates that we'll present to you on July 20th.
I appreciate that guarantee.
I will definitely let Jenny know that there's a guarantee on the table.
Madam Mayor, one other question is, as far as a format, if I recall in prior years, we had, it might have been this one where you had your spreadsheet up, and as we talked about adding and subtracting, we could see you manipulate the spreadsheet. Is the idea that we're going to be sitting up here?
Yep.
Good.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Borton, yes, we're looking to utilize this setup as we are right now, and then we will have the Excel spreadsheet so we can make changes on the fly, just so you can see the changes and what the impacts are.
Great.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, any other topics for future meetings? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
30.
Just because I can.
See her next week.